I was what you are. You can become what I am.
Hey folks, this is Steve, aka Horizon Brave, on Discord. Today we're going to be trying something a little different. This is going to be in the nature of Green Team's sort of experimental shows and how we present things. This is going to be something I'm trying out. Maybe the rest of the team might adopt it, maybe not. If not, it might be something that I might pursue as a solitary venture. But I just wanted to grab. There's a few. There's never a lot of places to go for book news discussion. There's always a lot of areas we can go for reviews. Sort of roundtable discussions on books. There's a ton of reviews on YouTube. The whole booktube culture is pretty prevalent. But there's not a lot of places where you can go to get sort of like news about books and about sort of pop culture that can be discussed in such a manner. So I wanted to go through. So I usually hang out on Reddit, or a lot of times there's on the Guardian. They have like a book section, for book related news, and so I found something that came across. I believe this was posted on it was either on the Reddit, r the Reddit book subreddit, or it might have been on the Guardian, but. One of the articles that I came across that was pretty interesting that I wouldn't mind having actually a discussion about, a talk about, with maybe the greater team, is this article that came up, has to do with, the now COVID related, sort of environment we're all in. And is the idea that there's a big uptick in sales for printed books, and so much so that now suppliers are sort of having a hard time now to keep the supply in bookstores. Basically, two of the biggest printing companies were unfortunately affected by COVID. So before the uptick in sales began, there was this. As I'm sure you all are aware and may have unfortunately may have been, felt it financially. Many of the companies around had either have gone under or shuttered or have, filed for bankruptcy, and it's been creating, havoc, for lack of a better word. And two of the largest printing companies in the U.S. unfortunately have been disrupted by this. So this spring, as people were found themselves, indoors and not able to go out, and the socially distancing was in full swing. They found themselves buying printed books, and especially now as we're reopening, we're seeing the bookstores open up. There's also this now rush, basically like I imagine as like the bank runs, like in the 30s and 20s, 30s rather, where people would have like a run on the banks. I picture now if people are with a run on printed books. I'm sure not to that quite to that extent, but it sort of brings up the question. I mean, they have these two big printing houses are LSC, which declared bankruptcy back in April, and the other one is called is a printing company called Quad, QUAD, and their printing company Quad is their printing business is completely up for sale. So someone will be taking it over when they find a buyer. LSC declared bankruptcy, and there's still a chance that this company can still pull out of this. Bankruptcy does not mean you're closed up for good. So sometimes what I like to do is I'll visit, like if I know a company's not doing well, I'll visit the website to see if they make any statements about it. There's nothing really here about about the most current news. They have a section on restructuring, which it does address the bankruptcy, but it's pretty pretty generic information. Um, what I like to do sometimes is go to the careers section to see if they are actually like what positions are still being hired for. Are they still in the process of looking for people? And it seems like they have a lot of warehouse space that needs filling. I noticed, so maybe a lot of stocking. And that lends to this idea, right? This seeing them trying to fill warehousing and boxing positions lends itself to the idea that they're going into overdrive of trying to get books out to us. Excuse me, I sipped some coffee. So LSC is in financial straits. Quad is up for sale basically, and now there are other book printers obviously in the United States, not quite this big, but there are still many that do still exist. So now we're in the situation where the printers are sort of have like now a backlog of books being able to maybe possibly not meet quota, as is this big rush on books. And now we compile this with the fact that we know there's going to be a huge increase in book in the need for printed books, because many of the books that were delayed because of COVID were now pushed out to the fall and to early 2021, and now they're in that time they're now going to have to cram all these books that were sort of backported to now be printed all up at all at once. So it's going to put a lot of strain on these smaller printing companies to pick up the slack. So there may very well be as silly as it sounds, a shortage of printed books for quite some time until the sort of surge is over and the demand dies down again. Which I expect to happen. I expect this to this spike in book demand to sort of flatten itself out, and perhaps drop off as kids are going back to school. Usually in summer there's obviously an uptick for summer reading and leisurely reading. But as kids are going back to school, and parents are focusing back on work again, the time and commitment to reading for fun could bring the numbers and demand down. And just to go back on the whole idea that there was this spike in sales for printed books is pretty interesting as well, because if you think about it, you think there would have been a greater spike in digital sales, which I'm sure there were. It's not reported in this article, but I'm sure that the spike for digital sales also was quite large. But it's just saying for printed books themselves, the unit sales of print books were up more than 5% over last year at this time. So from early June to about mid-August, print sales were up more than 12% over the previous 10 weeks. And this comes from NPD BookScan, which I assume is probably like a book collection sales aggregation company. I would assume. I have to do some more work and I have to do some more research into what they do. There's been a lot of high, not priority, but books that have been very in the public eye. Really, there's a Stephanie Meyer, her new book, Suzanne Collins, John Bolton, and Mary Trump's book for political. The two political books, they always garner high readership. So it's just pretty interesting to see that there was this spike of printed books, and what it means in the future. Now, like I said, I think it's not going to be as big of a deal, for the immediate future, only because I don't expect the high sales numbers to continue, but there is quite a big backlog now at the printers, which is really creating havoc for the publishers as well. So just for example, here there's the book Brian Stetler's book Hoax, which is about the relationship between Donald Trump and Fox. It was out of stock on Amazon. On the week basically it came out. So and now it's showing a ship time of basically 1 to 2 months out. So for more copies to come in. Um, so what's funny is so just to give you an idea of these numbers here, we have the books were initially printed for a volume copy of 50,000 copies. So that was the initial order amount ordered up front, and now an additional 100,000 copies were ordered. So that's pretty crazy. Um, I would love to see, and maybe for the follow up, we can do a comparison to see what those numbers look like in the past. Um, so yeah, I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. And so one thing that I did want to now think about with this is, what does this mean in the longer distance future? Is this going to mean that it's going to become a I mean, will this show that printed books are not dead? Because I know for us, more hardcore book fans, yeah, we don't really, we always like to have our books with us, and I say, quote unquote hardcore, but, we like having physical copies of books, and I don't speak for everyone, just for myself personally. But I know many in the community, still hold, physical books, pretty close, pretty dear to them. So, even for myself, like I have an Audible subscription. I read probably 99% of my books through Audible. So I listen to them. But if it's still a book that I like, or a book that I know I'm gonna want, I will still buy the physical copy on top of the Audible book, just so I can have it on my shelf, and I can just take it off the shelf and look at it, go through it if I need to, if I want to. Um, so there is still I think a demand for physical copies. It might be lessened, as and I think it will. Obviously, I don't foresee physical books making this grand comeback now, and it's gonna split the difference. I still think physical media in terms of books are um, I don't think they're going anywhere soon, but I don't think they're long for this world for in the next 50 years. I think that physical books will they probably won't be gone completely, but they will be more of a collector's thing. They'll be more of a hobbyist item to have. So, like some people collect, just like old computers or stamps. I think it'll be more something like that. Like, yeah, you can have them. It's probably harder to find, more expensive, but or like vinyl or something. It'll be something akin to that, where there's no real purpose to it except that if you are a collector. Um, so I think that's sort of the way it's going, and the fact that and I know it is COVID related, so clearly that's played a major part in it. But the fact that the two biggest printing companies both sort of were hit the hardest, at the same time, it kind of says a lot. And it's a sad state of affairs, the fact that they both were hit. But is again, it's not just sound too doom and gloom about it. I think LSC sounds like they're going to they filed for Chapter 11, but it sounds like they'll be able to sort of pull themselves out of the hole, because I think that, this recent uptick has shown them at least that that there is still life in obviously printed media. Now, of course, the other sort of, I guess, scary proposition would be that because they are seeming to be prepping for this sort of shortage within the next weeks and months to come, that people, because they might not be able to obtain a physical copy of a book, that many will go to digital and online, like PDFs, like Kindles and PDFs, and other various ebooks, and just buy them digitally. And unfortunately, that when that happens, that sort of creates a sort of a lock in. Like, if you're getting, if you can't find yourself, if you can't find the book you want to, and that may not drive you to buy a Kindle itself, but if you know that this is happening, and that this will be sort of a long term thing, possibly. That could be a reason for you to just, throw your arms up in the air and say, okay, I'll just get a Kindle and I'll go the digital route from now on. And that's going to be that's going to hurt long term booksellers. So obviously the physical stores like the Targets, the WalMarts, the Barnes and Nobles, the books, the booksellers, the Books a Million, those are going to be hurt by this, because again they're being completely bypassed by buying digitally. And Barnes and Noble has their Nook. I'm not even sure how well that's selling. How like if that's creating a profit for them. Again, something else I would love to do the research on to see how well the Nook is actually buoying Barnes and Noble. But if they do turn to having a more digital outlook, I'm talking about customers, then that means it's gonna potentially hurt brick and mortar retailers. They're going to have with the lack of capacity and in this sort of uncertain time, it might force the marketplace to go more digital, and people I think are if this would have happened 20 years ago, or maybe even 15 years ago, there probably wouldn't be as big of a scare that people are going to go straight digital because it wasn't as ubiquitous and it wasn't as easy to get. But now I think that we've gotten to the point where buying books online is so quick and easy, and most people have a device to read at least a book, if not like a Kindle, like a dedicated device. So I think that's going to I think that plays now into the idea that yeah, this a small what would have been like a small blip on the radar now could be a pretty big turning point because this has happened before. The article also links to an older bottleneck that happened at the printers a few years back, where there was like and it surprisingly also came when there was a big turnout of political books. Um, I believe Bob Woodward's Fear, Michelle Obama's Becoming. There's a few really big hitting titles there, and it also sort of put a strain on the printers to be able to keep up with the demand. So it has happened before. I don't think there's a need to panic and rush to get your physical books and hoard them or anything. I don't think it's going to go that route. But it's just interesting to see that now that this has come to the point where now it's actually sort of a perfect storm where the printers are going out and are in financial trouble, and as well as this large uptick in book sales. I think sort of came together now to create now a pretty I won't say worrying some, but a much more I guess alarming feel to it now, so that people are taking I guess a bigger note of it. So just something interesting to think about. And also it sort of also begs the question that what do publishers want from this? I mean, would a publisher want to have people buy physical copies over digital copies? I would think so. I would think that if I'm a publisher, yeah, having people be able to go out and get a ton of ebooks, and obviously cheaper to produce. I feel like that the book companies themselves would see it more of an overall negative, that it's especially with the sort of dominant seller like Amazon would have over the entire market. I think that it could, I don't want to say Amazon with their Kindle ebook would have a monopoly. That's I don't think it's I think we use that word a little too liberally, but I think they would have the power to put a bigger squeeze on the publishers. So I would think that the publishers would want people to have more access to going to a brick and mortar store. It'd be a lot. They'd have a lot more wiggle room to produce a large amount of books and get them to the hands of people rather than going through one single seller. But but who knows? They see that ebooks are, because there's clearly no comparison that ebooks are cheaper to produce and distribute than a printed copy. I mean, even if you take into account, the servers that you'd have to hire, like a company to distribute, to have actual, distribute the books. on whatever vendor you would contract with. So if you have your Amazon Kindle, they would be in charge of distributing the book, and the fees for that are probably insane. Um, but that comes all I'm sure that's still cheaper than having to contract with printers, for the paper, the binding, all that, all the shipping costs, theft from stores, and all that comes into play, into the physical copy. So probably I would say it probably would be cheaper for them to produce ebooks, but long term, would that be something that publishers would want to do? I'm not sure. So yeah, so I would love to see how this shakes out. We'll probably know something a bit more concrete. I probably want to say next year, spring, we'll see maybe some of the effects of this actually becoming a bit more concrete. But anyway, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Keep it pretty short. So overall, I think technically, I mean, it's good that there is an uptick in reading. I don't think anyone would deny that. I think having more people and kids pick up physical copies of books is a win. It's just the fact that now we can't meet those supplies, and which may actually be worse long term, because there's going to be a lot of authors who unfortunately will have to cancel tours. They won't be able to have enough of their books to go around. So up front, yeah, it is good news, but I think it's something we're going to keep an eye on. We'll have to. This could be the opportunity for smaller print companies to sprout up. Maybe in the spring we might see, instead of having the two big names which I mentioned before, maybe there might be a few sort of startup print companies that'll do work on demand. That's certainly an option where they can spin up take a few contracts and spin up a few books in the interim. But we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. Who knows? Maybe I'll have a follow up. Like I said, I want to start doing these sort of news related, kind of, current event type reviews and and sort of talks, just to see how it goes, to get your guys' opinions on them. And speaking of which, you can I would love for you to weigh in, see how you guys feel about this. Do you think there's a long term? Do you think there's a problem going to be long term? What do you guys think of the idea that books are will slowly be just become sort of collector's items? Will they'll be sort of specialty things that you can get, not really mainstream. People won't go to the bookstore to buy books. They might go to to study or read, but electronic reading might be the thing to do. Do you think that's a good thing, bad thing? What do you think long term is going to look like? So let me know. You can join us on Reddit. We have a great Discord server filled with many of the fine folk here on Discord, as well as the main Legendarium podcast. So subscribe. You can find us on Spotify. Join us on Discord. And consider, if you could spare us a few dimes, you can become a Patreon member. So yeah, that's it, guys. Take care. This is Steve, aka Horizon Brave. Leave us a comment on Reddit, and we will see you next time.